Welcome to Business as Unusual. This is the live stream where we explore the pressing issues and emerging trends shaping the business landscape. We're going to start in just a couple minutes, but if you have questions, we want this to be interactive. Please put them in the chat and I'll try to get to all of them during today's session. I'm Kathy Steele, and I'm the CEO of Red Caffeine and your host today. And for those of you unfamiliar with Red Caffeine, we are a growth consultancy. So we build and execute go-to-market plans for ambitious mid-market companies. And our service offering includes a fractional team led by a senior level marketing leader that enables a business to scale rapidly without having to hire a wide range of staff members. And so today we are talking about people. And as Mary, Lynn and I were talking as we were getting ready, I'm just getting back from the Women in Manufacturing Summit in Boston. I'm so, just excited from being there. And as you can imagine, being a manufacturing conference, one of the hot button topics was workforce and talent strategy. So today, we're going to talk about key trends shaping the future of work, like the big stay, and how to re-engage employees seeking more stability. We'll discuss the benefits of flexible arrangements like flex-tirement and the impact of AI-driven recruitment and the balance between tech efficiencies and human connection in hiring, and a lot more. So let's jump in. And so for those of you who follow Business as Unusual, you may recognize our guest today, Lynn Fayoumi. She's the CEO of HR Source. And Lynn, for those who have not met you before, could you just share a little introduction about yourself and HR Source? And then we always love to know what else is not on the bio.
Sure, Kathy. Thanks again for having me. I love doing these with Red Caffeine and getting to interact with you and talk about what's trending in the workplace and people-related issues. But as you mentioned, I am the CEO of HR Source. We are an employers association that has been serving Illinois businesses for over 126 years. We have over 1,200 member organizations that come from a wide array of industries. While our roots are in manufacturing, we serve a diverse array of businesses, including hundreds of libraries, park districts, associations, financial services, distribution companies. So our common denominator is employers. Anything that challenges employers or employers need help on that has to do with their employees, HR Source is here to help. I have been really honored and privileged to be the CEO of HR Source for 25 years. I lead a team of over 40 professionals, attorneys, trainers, compensation experts, and we work to help employers perform better. I know we share that in common. We come at it slightly differently, but we both are in business to help employers be better and to help supplement their already fantastic teams with members of our teams who can help really energize and boost their effectiveness. What's not on my resume, I'm kind of an open book, and a lot of people know a lot about me since I've been here at HR Source so many years, but we were on the topic of the conference you were at this year, or this week actually, in Boston. And I think what's not on my resume is that I was a fan of and a practitioner of leisure travel even before the term was invented.
Leisure travel, does that mean business and
leisure?
Okay. Yes.
So it's like if you know you're going somewhere interesting, or even somewhere you've never been, or somewhere where you might have friends or other contacts, is to add a little time at the beginning or the end of your trip, or if you have any time to grab a cup of coffee with someone or go on a local tour. It's always to make sure that you get to spend a little bit of time enjoying and embracing the destinations that you're fortunate enough to be able to visit when you're traveling for business. There's, a urban myth or a fantasy out there that business travel is luxurious and amazing. But for those of us who do a lot of it, it can be kind of awful and hard and tiresome and boring. But if you go into each trip with the mindset of, I'm going to try out a special restaurant, or I'm going to get to see an old college friend, or I'm going to take time out. I was recently in Atlanta and I realized that as a member of the Morton Arboretum, they have reciprocity with other botanical
Oh,
gardens.
cool.
So I took a couple hours out. I took an Uber and went over to the Atlanta Botanical Garden, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I wish I would have known that tip years ago. I've only personally been doing that the last few years, but I also think that's a opportunity. I know I belong to not a lot of member organizations that have national or international presence. So now I'm actually even thinking about like who else I can connect with from a business standpoint from those association contacts. So all right, well, let's jump in. But I love that tip. Thank you so much. Because Boston, I did take an extra day there and it was so much fun. I mentioned this in the intro, and we talked about when we were prepping for this a few weeks back, but the big say, it's kind of the non-sexy version of what was going on a few years ago with the Great Resignation. And so given that so many employees are really opting to be stay in the roles that they're in. It's an evolving economy. We've got the election coming up. So how are organizations re-engaging these employees? They may be staying, but may not be as engaged as you'd want them to be.
right. So the big stay isn't quite as newsworthy or as sexy as the Great Resignation was, which just dominated headlines for a long, long time. The Great Stay is really, I believe, an outgrowth of the fact that a lot of employees who decided to leave or to even job hop to get a little more flexibility or a little more money in their paycheck didn't always end up with higher satisfaction, a
Mm.
better work life balance, or even joining organizations that really fulfilled their promises of being a better fit for them. And so I think as the job market has become more stable, unemployment has kind of leveled out, the opportunities to make a jump and get a big bump in pay are also not quite as plentiful. Many employees have said, you know what? It might not be that bad where I'm at. I'm going to re engage, I'm going to recommit, I'm going to see what opportunities my employer has to put additional training or upskilling opportunities into me, to see what promotional opportunities might be available, what other types of interesting projects I might be able to get involved in. And so, in their annual performance appraisals or discussions, as well as hopefully more regular check ins or feedback sessions or one on ones with their leadership, their managers, or their supervisors, they're having these conversations. They're asking their employer, why should I stick around? Like, do you have opportunities, and why should I stay? And if I do stay, what can we work on to make it worthwhile for me?
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I think, I do feel like there's still, that onus on employers to constantly be looking at their learning and development programs, their growth pathing strategies, making sure people understand, even with smaller organizations, that there is forward momentum, but even, leaning into your benefits. And so, it's just always interesting how underutilized some of our benefits programs are, just because they're vast and we don't always know what is in it for me in our benefits strategy. So I love that, employees are asking those questions, and I think employers should be really making the case for some of the things that they're doing more frequently in their communications with their employees.
I couldn't agree more, Kathy. And if employees aren't asking, why aren't they asking? So again, raise the discussion, put out communications in various ways, whether it's in your, monthly town hall meeting or in email communications. Are you putting your benefit providers up in front of your team members so that employees know what's even available? We recently did a benefits survey, a benefit satisfaction survey, but we also asked our team members, not only what you like and what you value here, but what would you be interested in? What should we be researching in terms of additions to our benefits program? So employers and employees, it's a two-way communication. So if employees aren't asking, you might also need to start the discussion or put out some interesting information which might alert people to the fact that there are benefits they're not taking advantage of. And also, as an employer, opening up that opportunity for employees to make suggestions on what might be more meaningful or valuable to them.
Yeah, I love it. I think, as your employee population changes, what, they want in their career or as well as their, work experience changes. And so, being able to use things like we always recommend some of the benchmarking surveys that you can do in the, competing for best places to work. Recognition. It's not just about winning those kinds of awards. It's about what you can learn about what others are doing in the marketplace about their benefits and perks that they're giving to employees. Because I think, there are some really additive things you can add as an employer.
Right. And as your population changes, their desires also change.
Right.
Right. So
Exactly.
making sure that the benefits plan that you currently have in place is meeting the needs not only of today's employee, but also who you're trying to attract.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, there's been some interesting workforce change or trends. And, I always love these buzzwords like flex retirement, which is amazing. I love the concept of this because I think this has been a market gap for a while. People are investing into benefits programs that include wellness. And then, DE&I, like what's going on with all the backlash. I heard a lot of great stories at Women in Manufacturing about, the programs that people were putting in place. But I'm also hearing, there's management level rifts going on right now. So like there's a lot, even though the big stay is a thing, there's a lot of things going on in the marketplace. Talk a little bit about what you're seeing.
Wow. We could do an hour session on each of those topics, Kathy. They're all very rich, and some of them quite politically charged. And we are here, as you mentioned, an election year with a lot of things happening and a lot of issues kind of being bantered about. Which makes it a bit of a challenging environment. I keep calling the election just one of the many headwinds we're facing because there's quite a bit of uncertainty. And people are kind of in a wait and see mode about not only how the outcome of the election might impact legislation and cases and what is going to be the situation we're faced with in the years ahead. So let me just pick out a few of the things you mentioned.
Okay. I know I kind of threw a few
Yes.
curveballs at you,
Whoa. Well, I love a potpourri.
but
Flex retirement. Love that topic. Big fan. In an environment like we have, where there is a challenge to fill our roles with qualified individuals, what better than being able to retain some of our knowledge workers, some of our long-term team members who have great industry background, who can help mentor and train our newer employees who still have active minds and active bodies and want to contribute and can really help us in this transition. I think flex retirement, if organizations can find ways to do it. And what's so cool is that there is no one size fits all,
right.
right? There are so many variations on a theme. HR Source has been taking advantage of flex retirements for decades already in our fractional team. And we get the benefit of seasoned, dedicated, brilliant team
Yeah.
members who are either seasonally wanting to work or just wanting to work all year long, but part time.
Right.
They might be able to pick and choose the types of projects they work on. They can choose whether or not they want to work 100% remote, whether or not they are willing to still go on site and work on HR projects at our member organizations. So organizations that are willing to consider the options available that might fall under that broad heading of flex retirement are going to be glad they did. It's such a, it's a wonderful opportunity for both employees, both people like me who are, aging and want to keep working for many years, but not necessarily in a full-time traditional role. If you can take advantage of it, you are going to be in a great position to retain qualified team members, and be the beneficiary of it. So are your customers or clients.
Yeah, I love the idea. I also, just can't imagine not working. So I think it is just brilliant. I'm glad there's a label, so it makes it kind of simplified to understand it. And I think, it really will serve a gap in our marketplace, and bringing that tribal knowledge, and giving somebody a long tail succession strategy so that you could really mentor a role that you're trying to backfill for over, a way longer time frame than a 2 week plan for somebody to exit the business. So it seems extremely advantageous. What about, some of the things that you're seeing from, like, what else can you tell me on that topic? Wellness, RIFs?
Yes, yes. So we definitely are seeing an uptick in RIFs and reductions in force. I think, obviously, while the economy, for many years it's been an employees market, I think many organizations either held on to and or hired and budgetarily are struggling to continue to have as large of a workforce. So they're looking much more closely at headcount, and they're making some performance-based decisions about, what employees are pulling their weight, are improving the organization. And so, this is something we like to take a look at closely. I think it's a leading indicator. I don't want to, ring the alarm bells because I don't think those are necessary yet. I think the rifts that are happening are strategic in nature currently. They're not broad brush, huge, some of them are newsworthy when they're at big organizations, but I see a lot of them happening at small to medium sized organizations for small groups of employees. And they're not broad brush decisions. They're very particular based on the success in any given department, any given division or geographic location, as well as the employee's own performance. So
Okay.
I think they are happening. We've been seeing an uptick over the past several months.
Yeah, I felt like, and it's super anecdotal because I don't have the marketplace data that you have access to, but I definitely feel like there was a lot of older or, management level people that were just, blindsided, people that I network with or know personally. And it's been a little concerning. Do you believe that there's any kind of ageism going on right now in terms of recruiting and retaining staff?
There's no question that more senior and older employees, so I mean senior also in terms of years of
Yeah.
experience, as well as age, are having, and they have for decades. This is not a new phenomenon,
Okay.
but it is, I think, more widely known these days, more widely experienced that it takes um, more senior and experienced as well as older individuals much longer, and it's much more challenging to find a job of equal or higher pay and prestige.
Okay.
It is a challenging marketplace. Fortunately, the gig economy and the opportunities for fractional work have helped many of these seasoned professionals find alternative ways to make money and to still have interesting work. Unfortunately, they don't always come. They most usually don't come with the same sort of benefits packages
Right,
that a
right.
traditional employment model has. So that can be tough if you don't have a partner who has access to benefits. And I hear over and over again from many job seekers, as well as those who are fully employed, benefits speak more loudly than base pay. The need for health insurance and access, to a 401k plan is often more pressing and of higher priority than what the base pay for any given position is.
Yeah, I feel like it's so evolved. I mean, when you're getting asked about your benefits in interviews, I cannot remember that 15 years ago. It
Oh,
is just so different in terms of what I think that, employees are way more educated on what to ask for and what total compensation and perks can look like in the organizations too. So kudos to them for really better understanding that. And I think it's great for employers too, because for those of us that do provide really strong benefits for people, we want people to understand that you're getting compensated well beyond your base salary with all of these additional things that we do. So, all
yes.
right. Well, let me switch gears and talk about the topic that we're always talking about, artificial intelligence. So, like, I feel like there's not a conversation. I'm doing a CISO AI thing later today. I'm like, what in the world? Like, it's just infiltrating every conversation, and it's also finding its way into our recruiting and uh, in both on the candidate side as well as the employer side. So talk a little bit about what you're seeing in AI utilization.
So I'll start with the employer side. Employers have been harnessing the power of AI in the recruitment arena for some time. Um, and I think that is a wonderful use of AI. A lot of the tools we use with applicant tracking, with even the writing of job descriptions and job posts. There's just so many ways to harness AI as a way to get a first draft. I would still really, really enforce that I believe that employers need to be editing and scrutinizing what AI provides them as a draft. Uh, I find that people who don't spend the time editing what comes out of initial AI requests, it's often obvious to the naked eye. A lot of the same advice is going to go on the employee side. So employers have a lot of access to AI. I encourage employers to allow their employees to use it and to share specific cases and use applications with their
Yes.
team members, right? To benefit from it and to share best practices. Certainly to be concerned about the legal implications of as well, be eyes wide open about how we use it. From an applicant point of view, AI is also very helpful in drafting of your resume, of drafting of cover letters, of helping to practice responses to interview questions. Again, make sure that it is authentic, genuine, true, truthful, and that you are not overstating your skill sets, your
Mm-hmm.
experience. I mean, as I think we've talked about on one of these sessions before, it's pretty concerning when you hear what the rate of falsification of resumes and applications was in the past. I think I heard as high as 2/3 had some sort of boasting of skills or experiences that there weren't true, or overstating of education, um, you know, only putting the years they worked for an employer to try to skim by. Maybe they were only there a few months, December of one
Okay.
year to February of the next, but they used the years instead of the months. Um, all of those things can be amplified by the use of AI, right? If you were a halfway decent writer describing your experiences at a prior job, you could have made yourself look pretty good. With the help of AI, you can make yourself look amazing. And so the onus then is on the employer to really figure out if the person is everything they've
Yeah.
made themselves out to be through a really effective pre screening process, which usually still involves a phone screen. It might involve a video pre screen like this. But then also, I've heard a lot of employers say they've gone back to in person interviews because they've been duped one too many times. They were finding that their applicants had some other, either their phone or another source. And during a live interview, we're having a virtual interview like this, reading answers very discreetly that were not their own. And
Wow.
so the use of AI can have kind of an ugly underbelly, I think, that many employers are concerned about, not just on the resume side, but also then in an interview situation. So we're
That's so
seeing,
interesting. Oh,
isn't it?
yes. I hadn't thought of that.
Interesting slash scary
Yeah.
and
No, I mean
concerning.
that to me is lying, but I feel like it's to you back to your point around sharing ideas and sharing use cases across your team. I think it is really important for employers to I wouldn't say mandate rules around AI usage, but I do think you have to sort of think about how you're using AI and have some do's and don'ts. I think we are going to get into a place where there are a lot more corporate policy around utilization and the disclosure of using AI and how, I wonder if it will creep its way into having to disclose certain things within the interview process. If you could even outright ask people, was there any use of AI technology in creating that cover letter because it was so incredibly, connected to our job position. Those are the things that I feel like are challenging for a candidate to, if they're applying for lots of different roles, maybe they may have a broad-based skill set. Using AI to make it more resonant with a particular role seems so effective to me. But I do feel like there's going to be just some legality that we're going to all be looking at long term in this space.
100% agree. I think a lot of organizations are already putting some policy guidelines into place and sharing those either with their employees only or with their clients or customers. We're starting to get more and more feedback from our members. For example, in some of our video meetings, people were turning on AI note takers, and other members were complaining that they weren't comfortable because they thought they were coming to a meeting that was in confidence.
Private, okay.
Yes. So I agree with you. This is kind of the wild, wild west. And we are just starting to scratch the surface of all of not just the practical implications and the practical uses, but also the risks that are going to keep playing themselves out in the years to come. I thought we might talk a little bit about, the headline catching concerns about AI taking everyone's jobs,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Which they, I think for the most part, certainly there are many jobs that AI is going to help supplement, augment, support, make easier. I don't think AI in and of itself is going to be a big killer of jobs. I think smart individuals, savvy individuals in all sorts of professions are going to need to use and are already needing to use AI to make themselves more effective and keep themselves competitive.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. I mean, when and I might even lessen this, but when I talk about, upskilling and that I am saying to people now that if you're not going to leave the workforce in like the next 3 years, you better get on that bus because everyone else is using AI. And so that to be able to, just know more about the tools, know where they can have be effective. I mean, I am a technology lover. I've always loved things that automate administrative tasks. I've been using those types of tools throughout my entire career. So yes, and more of those things, but it doesn't present like take away the need from people to actually use that information and do the thinking part of it, to really do their job better. So I couldn't agree with you more that we're going to see a lot more utilization and expectation around AI in job positions and in terms of in our recruiting practices, that we'll be asking about those uses of those technologies.
And I would say to one of your points, sorry to
Oh,
interrupt.
no worries.
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with asking an applicant, did you use AI? Do you use AI, and did you use it to help on your resume or cover letter? There's nothing illegal. And I always recommend you ask the same questions of all of your candidates. So if you want to incorporate that, I can't see any legal reason you couldn't. So a couple of tips I would leave people with are, make sure that if you're concerned, find ways to test. Like if there's something in a resume that seems too good to be true, I would have said this whether or not AI was around. Probe, ask, right? If you think a job looks like there's no way they increase sales 500%, ask for examples, right? Dig into the data. They've given you this. You didn't make this stuff up as the employer. They gave you this information. Another tip would be, if your organization isn't already talking about AI, make it a topic of conversation in management meetings. Ask people how they're using it, ask people to share. Don't make people feel like they have to keep it a secret. Socialize it, talk about it, learn from it, admit to mistakes, admit what you don't know and what you're still learning, share best practices.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I just like from a growth standpoint, I think every organization should have an AR component to their strategy for 2025. I mean, it's going to be part of my organization. I really, encourage others to think about, across your entire company, where can you be using these performance enhancing tools, and having people to come up with the ways things they want to make more efficient, and then sharing their experiences on using these tools across the team. So, is like on the last note on that, is there any thoughts around too much automation, too much reliance on technology? We don't want our candidates to feel like it is a fully automated hiring process. I mean, I'm cool to order food virtually without interfacing with people. I'm okay with a robot delivering me my meal, but like, do we want our candidates to feel like there's not a human connection in the recruiting process?
we definitely want to keep the human in human resources. So I would highly recommend finding ways. I mean, everything we're reading is that people are missing the human connection. Look at the conference you just got on a
Yes.
plane to go to in Boston. Since the pandemic and since we reinstituted in person conferences, every one of our conferences sells out. Our live sessions here at HR Source, the rooms are filled. People miss the human connection. We've learned people do better heads down independent work in the comfort of their home or their travel trailer or in a hotel on the road, somewhere private and quiet. But the collaboration and the opportunity to interact with others, learn from others, be mentored, make human connections is alive and kicking, and people are looking for it. So that's why I said so many of our employers have gone back to in-person interviews, especially if you have an environment where people are going to be
Right.
in front of your clients or members, or they're going to be interacting with a team. Invite them in, break bread, right?
Right.
Get people together. So definitely find a way to make human connections, whether it can start virtually. I mean, applicant pools are larger than ever. First of all, thanks to technology, and second of all, darn it with technology, because sometimes we're just getting inundated with applications. So many of them are not even from candidates who would ever be considered for a host of reasons.
Right.
So, we can't be having in-person interviews with everyone who submits or applies for a job. But once you cull your list down, make time to meet up with people in person and to get to know them. I think we can avoid a lot of hiring mistakes if we go back to that old school methodology. Prepare individually for interviews, right? And really take time to read their cover letter and ask personal questions related to the job at hand to try to get them to express examples that relate to the job you're hiring for.
Right.
So
No, I
definitely,
love, like those chemistry conversations by having a lunch. And I agree, it's not probably feasible to do everything in person, but if there's an opportunity to have an in-person element to your hiring processes, I couldn't agree more. Well, as we're on the topic of technology, let's talk about some of the analytics that we're using in HR. So it's really transforming decision making. So what are some of the things that you're seeing smaller mid-market companies leverage in terms of these analytical technologies?
right. So there are just so many HR metrics that are easier than ever to measure because of the help of technology, right? And so I think it's important, while the list of potential metrics is long, get behind the numbers. So I'll name some metrics. So time to fill, cost of hire, turnover rate, absenteeism rate, cost of benefits, are just a few. And then there's the more positive ones like employee engagement, employee
Right.
satisfaction, performance ratings. What is more important than the measurement itself is what is behind the number. So let's use turnover as an example. Is your turnover rate high because you have let a lot of people go? Or is it high because the people you're hiring are leaving shortly after they're hired? Who are you losing? Is it in a particular department? People who work for a particular supervisor? Is it in a particular area of the country? Is it early team members, or are you losing people in the first 2 years of employment, or are you losing people after they've been with you 10 years? So shine a light, keep going down a level,
Yeah.
and to look at what the information means. Same thing with time to fill. That's kind of a popular HR metric, but that can be a way to look at whether or not your HR processes are efficient and effective, not necessarily what the quality of the candidates are. Because I've worked with many members, they get an amazing array of candidates, but their internal systems are not very strong. And so they're losing good candidates along the way. So time to fill might be extremely high, not because it takes forever to find a good candidate. It takes them forever to interview a candidate,
Right.
get the hiring decision made, to get an offer on the table. So what do the numbers mean? Take a look behind the curtain, delve down several levels, and keep asking why. Why is this number what it is? What here could use improvement? What does this say about our systems and processes? How can we do better?
Yeah, I love that. I think that, it's for any process in your organization, we look at that same kind of strategy when we're looking at sales. And is it the top of the funnel, or are we not closing at the rate that we, used to close at? So I love that, application of, real use case around some of the analysis that you can get from these tools. Because it is really pretty compelling, the information we can, but it's honestly no good unless we're doing something with it. So, all right, let's talk about one of the perks of being an HR Source member, your HR Source community. I loved, I hadn't done this before. I go on this community. I'm more of a watcher than I am a participant, but I do want to talk about some of the things that came up recently, because I think this always gives me a pulse of what is, what's on the minds of the market. So financial transparency and employee engagement. What are you seeing? I mean, I believe in financial transparency, so it's been something in my organization since the very beginning. But what else? What are you seeing other employers do around this?
I think there's an increasing desire by employees to understand the finances of their organization. So, I mean, we live in a world where transparency is a hot topic. And I think our younger employees are also much more gutsy about asking the
We
questions,
sure are. You're dead on.
right?
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing.
No.
And so, what I get concerned about is the fact that employers sometimes just do a data dump and they don't provide much context. So I love pairing financial transparency with appropriate education and information. I'm going to use the same term I used before, but get behind the numbers.
Right.
So just the numbers on their face might not be that meaningful to your employees, but breaking it down and helping them understand what they mean to leadership. For example, I report to a board of directors and we share a lot of metrics with our board that then I also share with our team. But to help our team understand, what's our board looking for? What types of tough questions do they ask us? What do we have to report on for them to feel comfortable that our organization is in a healthy place and that we're spending money in the right places and that we're fiscally sound and healthy? Explaining that to our team members, talking about the metrics that mean a lot to our leadership helps them understand. And then having an open door. Not everyone is comfortable raising their hand in a group meeting and saying, I don't really understand this. I never took a business accounting class. I don't have an MBA. Help me explain revenues versus expenses and what a surplus means and what a profit margin means, and not making any question off limits, having it be right. No question is a bad question. We're here to help you understand. Our controller is very available to answer questions. People know that they can ask me questions. I'm also happy to admit when I don't know something or I'm still trying to learn, and what I benchmark with my peers, what types of metrics our industry group is looking at as a whole and what they mean. So financial transparency, I think, is good for organizations. It's good for leaders. It also really helps our employees understand and have a line of sight to where they can contribute to the organization's success.
Yeah, I couldn't. I mean, I believe in that financial literacy training. I really do. We've been doing it for a long time, and I do see there's a variety of perspectives from our employee population around what they care about in terms of numbers. So we've definitely, worked on and tweaked the information we're presenting, trying to keep it, minimal, so it's not super overwhelming and such. But to your point, I in creating financial awareness around how business operates, I mean, it's critically important for us as a growth consultancy because we are accountable to the dollars we're spending on the behalf of our clients. We want our employees to understand that. But I also know that, this can be very meaningful information in your personal financial situation. And I've heard many people that have worked for me or people that Great Game is really where I, learned more about financial transparency. Great Game of Business, for those of you that have not ever heard of it, it's all about, bringing your team around financial literacy and transparency. But I feel like those stories of, it really helped me better understand how to manage my own personal finances as a person for the first time on my own, not living with my parents. But I've also, had employees leave me to start their own, their own gig or their own company. And, having that understanding of all the elements of running a business, especially the financial elements that keep you open, are critically important tools as you think about, different optionality you have in your career. So I think it's got so many benefits. What about salary? I mean, we don't share salaries, we share pay bands, but what are people doing in terms of salary transparency? I know there's more onus on organizations to be putting out salary bands in their recruiting processes. What's your philosophy, or what are you thinking about there?
Well, I'm thinking Illinois employers, if they're not already thinking about it, they better, because in January, it's going to be the law in Illinois that in our job postings, we have to include salary information as well as benefits information. That does not mean we need to make it available to everyone in our organization, every single person's salary and benefits. But when we post a job, the salary and benefits for that job, and it can be a band or a range, have to be in the posting per Illinois law.
So
So
is it just for Illinois? Like, is how many
it's a state
states
by
are?
state law. So some states already have this law.
Okay.
So many employers that are national or doing recruitment nationally have already implemented this. Others have implemented it as a best practice, even when it wasn't the law. So laws like this are sweeping the nation. So they're making their way around the states. I think Illinois might have been in the teens somewhere in terms of
Okay.
adopting it. So for organizations who haven't read anything about it or don't know anything about it, just go to hrsource.org and you can Google, or in the search box, put pay transparency in Illinois, and you'll find plenty of articles about it to help guide you and give you more specific information. But I think it's helpful for employers. It should narrow the number of applicants that apply and help organizations avoid, or at least minimize, avoid might be my optimistic viewpoint, but minimize the number of applicants who are way above the salary range. It won't stop people from applying if they're way below it.
Right.
Um, but this is hopefully, the intention is certainly to provide more pay transparency as well as more equity,
Okay.
to try
Right.
to close the gap on some of the pay discrepancies we have between genders, between people of different races and ethnicities. Um, so its time has come, and it'll be the law of this state very shortly. So employers have to make themselves aware of it and figure out how they're going to adapt their practices and get ready. Because some employers, admittedly, aren't very formal about setting the pay rate until applications start coming in, and they kind of wing it
Right.
when the time comes for negotiations. So this will require more work up front, and hopefully result in more consistency and more pay equity.
Yeah, and I think that it just, again, going back to technology, there are a lot of resources out there that can help you establish your pay ranges based on benchmarking data across the US, or depending on where you're hiring. And I know you guys do, some HR benchmarking or salary benchmarking. Industry associations tend to have that information. So there's a lot of sources that you can lean into to finding that pay data. Was there anything else from a legislative or economic change that you think we should have on our minds as we're kind of in that topic?
Yeah, so Illinois, I always joke that Governor Pritzker has had a very busy pen the last few years. So there's a lot in Illinois, and I know we have an even broader audience than Illinois, but a lot has been happening at the state and local level. Illinois and Chicago employers have been struggling with these new paid leave laws that it went into effect this year that stressed a lot of employers out. I think some of the payroll providers weren't necessarily as quick as we had hoped with figuring out ways to help employers make this easy. We're also waiting for the courts on some other big issues like the Fair Labor Standards Act, the second big bump in the minimum salary threshold
Yeah.
is supposed to happen in January. The courts could at the last minute change that. We're waiting for what's going to happen with non-compete agreements. That's still kind of hung up in the courts.
Mhm.
So there is a lot happening. I know a lot of employers are also, you mentioned DE&I before. There's a lot of employers that have changed their stance and have, terminated their director of VP of DE&I. That's getting a lot of press. So there's some talk about whether or not affirmative action for government contractors, anything is going to change with those requirements. So there is a whole host of issues, both at a state, local, I should say more than both, at a state, local, and federal level that employers just need to stay eyes wide open about. A lot of things are in a holding pattern because of this election. And so wait and see. I know we'll meet again in 2025 and hopefully have another one of these sessions. And maybe we could even have one where we talk specifically about employment law issues that employers. There's also some new law out there regarding temporary workers and how they need to be compensated.
Yeah.
That's a tough one for many employers. The list goes on, Kathy.
Yeah, so there's this, and you don't want those things to sneak up on you. I know I've known a number of employers that have really been caught off guard and had to face some really stiff penalties in terms of making sure that they were compensating for some of the mistakes they've made in their hiring or employment practices. So, all right, I'm going back to the HR Source community for a minute. We talk about employee well-being, and there was a concept of glimmers. Can you talk about that for a minute? I love that.
Yeah, so I stumbled across this term glimmers online, and it is the opposite of triggers. So, triggers have been getting a lot of press with people's concerns with mental health, um, with some of the DE&I issues, with the return to work controversy or return to the office. Many things are triggering, and triggers are a real thing. I'm not downplaying at all the reality of triggers and what they can do to a human being in terms of their mental health and productivity. A glimmer is a positive. It is something that happens in your day. You can either go looking for it and cause it to happen or make it happen or choose it to happen, or it can happen organically. So I remember several years ago, I was in a Starbucks drive-through and I drove up and the barista told me someone had paid for my order.
Yeah,
A
I love
glimmer,
that.
a glimmer, right? Or you decide during the workday to just go outside for a few minutes, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, or you turn on the radio and they're interviewing your favorite author. Or you decide on your coffee break to call an old friend that you haven't talked to for a long time. There are so many ways to not only find glimmers for yourself that help you to have a better day or to pick up your mood or to get you out of a funk, but there are also thousands of ways that you can give other people glimmers by complimenting them, saying, wow, do you have a new haircut? That looks so great on you. To asking about their kids, to complimenting them on a job well done. There are so many ways to give yourself glimmers and give them to others. In this world where there is so much stress, controversy, news that's hard to hear and take in, glimmers are just a wonderful way to boost your own spirit and boost the spirit of others, both you work with as well as strangers.
Yeah, no, I love this topic, and I think for me, I got up this morning and played some cardio tennis because I haven't really had a chance to do that in a few weeks with lots of travel, and I wanted to mention, like, you mentioned something similar, but we had a client celebrating 100-year anniversary, and they did 100 random acts of kindness, and they gave their team the ability to go and buy somebody's gas, or it was just so heartwarming to hear some of the stories of things that their team did with those 100 random acts of kindness. All right, well, we are getting down to the wire. Share a couple rapid thoughts on what people should be thinking about for 2025.
So I'll do one tough one and then one fun one.
Okay.
The tough one is there is so much going on. You cannot put your head in the sand. I mean, post-election might be a little crazy for a whole host of reasons, but entering 2025, you have got to keep your finger on the pulse of all of these employment law changes and make sure that you're in compliance. You mentioned a client before, or more than one client, that was caught unaware. The penalties are unpleasant. So make sure if you're not able to do it yourself, you have someone on your team who's staying on top of all of the things that are happening in the employment arena, because it is a lot and it's not going to lighten up anytime soon. So that's the tough one. That's the homework assignment. The positive one is counter that with some glimmers.
Yeah.
Give yourself glimmers and give other glimmers. We have been blessed with this gorgeous fall weather. Get out and take a walk, buy yourself a pumpkin spice latte, light a candle at night, watch The Golden Bachelorette. I don't know, do anything to make yourself feel better. Go on a walk with a colleague, call someone out of the blue, compliment someone, send a donation to the folks who are suffering in North Carolina or in Florida after these devastating hurricanes. Give glimmers, and then also give yourself the gift of a glimmer to stay positive in the light of all of the things we're facing, both personally and in the workplace.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. All right. Well, Parker, can you bring up how people, if they want to get in touch with Mary Lynn, if you've got questions, this is how you can reach out to Mary Lynn. I encourage you to visit the HR Source website. There's tons of information on that site, and becoming a member organization like we are is really, really valuable. We definitely have taken advantage of lots beyond just their resource center. I want to also, thank you, Mary Lynn, for sponsoring Business Unusual. We really love our partnership with you, but we also have another sponsor, M3 Learning, and they are, creating sales superstars through their training and coaching services. And next month, we are going to be featuring a really kind of fun and exciting topic about how to use improv skills to improve your sales and marketing strategies. And so we're going to talk a little bit about why improv is just a powerful tool to use in business. I think there's so many different applications. We're going to be talking a lot about how to use it to allow you to think more extemporaneously, and when things get thrown at you like curveballs. We're going to showcase some of the ways that teams that sales teams are using improv to really create this more ensemble experience for everyone in the room has a role, and it doesn't, there's not one solo artist in the conversation. You're really showcasing your team in an effective way through those skill sets. And then myself and Tom Latteray from M3 Learning will be on the hot seats. We're going to do some interactive improv exercises, and so you can come in and cheer us on. But as we wrap up, I really hope everyone took something away from what we were talking about today, and you've got some new things to be thinking about in your talent strategy and plan for 2025. I want to thank my guest, Mary Lynn. Thank you so much again for sharing your experience. And if you have any more questions about how to use these ideas in part of your growth strategy, please feel free to reach out to me or any of us at Red Caffeine. Mary Lynn, I can't wait to talk about this with you and some of the things that we're seeing early next year in 2025 schedule. But until next time, let's continue to challenge the usual. And I'll see you all back here in November.
Thanks, Kathy.